We have an update regarding Coby White and when we will next see him on the basketball court for the Chicago Bulls. And then we also have to discuss some comments that came from Dalen Terry. The question is, can he be the Chicago Bulls' next Alex Caruso? Huh? And then the Chicago Bulls, they face off versus the Denver Nuggets tonight in another preseason matchup. Some things that we're going to be looking out for in tonight's game. We got a lot of things to talk about on today's episode. But before we talk about it and break it all down, you got to hear the music first.
Cognac. Gang.
Shy Boys podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down on another daily episode for your Chicago Bulls. So if you're tuned in, locked in, ready to see red and talk Bulls basketball, man, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Look, we're going to kick this thing off with an update regarding Coby White. This came via KC Johnson after some talks and discussion with head coach Billy Donovan, pretty much said that Coby White will not make his way to the basketball floor during the preseason. He would not play at all. The expectation is for Coby White to be ready for the first regular season game versus the Detroit Pistons for the Chicago Bulls on October 21st. So in a couple weeks here. And what was being told to us is that the Chicago Bulls will use that 5-day break in between the last preseason game and then the start of the regular season as a ramp-up period for Coby White. And that's what we got. And I'm not necessarily mad at it. We know calf injuries have, resulted in some catastrophic injuries last year, speaking more particularly. And I'd rather have Coby White ready for the regular season, have that calf as healthy as possible heading into this season than to go out there and try to force him into some preseason games and then ultimately have to miss the start of the regular season just because he re-aggravated that injury. Now, it will be a tall task simply because he's not getting like a ramp-up period with actual basketball versus opposing teams, but I still think that Coby White is a veteran. He is a seasoned veteran now in this league, and he understands what is required of him to help the Chicago Bulls basketball team go out there and win games. So I don't have many concerns in regards to that. I'm definitely going to be watching to see if that's something that's going to hinder Coby White this season, but I think that this is a good plan for the Chicago Bulls to ensure that Coby White is healthy and ready to go for the regular season. Let me know how you feeling about Coby White. Now let's talk about Dalen Terry. Dalen Terry, can he be the Chicago Bulls' next Alex Caruso? Let me know how y'all feeling. Honest opinions on that. Everything is welcome. Now, the reason I'm asking this is because Dalen Terry did an interview with Chicago Sun-Times, and he had a lot of different things to say. One of the things that he said was, the last 2 years, I haven't been myself. I was trying to be what people wanted me to be, and it's time for me to be myself. That's why I changed my number, man. We're going to leave that in the past. I'm trying to do what's best for the team and not worry about pleasing everybody. He went on to say, this is how I think everybody views it. They view us as, I'm not a guy that scores 20, 30 points. Well, I got drafted to be like Alex Caruso. Okay, he can guard. He can do all the little things. He can be a connector. That's what I strive to be this year. End quote. So a lot of things to dive into when it comes to Dalen Terry. If you ask me, I'm not going to sell him short. Now, I know that Alex Caruso is up here in a different type of discussions when you talk about Chicago Bulls players. I'm not saying it's going to happen with the Chicago Bulls, but I don't know as of right now. That's just my honest evaluation. I know that we like to make and create hot takes, and a lot of the times we stand on business and we just have to admit when we're wrong. But I have placed obstacles in front of Dalen Terry starting back to last season, and he has turned me into a believer. Last season, if I'm holding myself accountable, I talked about Dalen Terry, and honestly, I had Julian Phillips placed above him if we were just, comparing him to one of his contemporaries on his team, to where those guys are fighting for positioning in the rotation. And at one point, I thought Julian Phillips was the guy that was in the league. But I think that based off what we seen from Dalen Terry himself and what was shown by the coaching staff has showed us that, number one, Dalen Terry has a lot in his tool bag right now that Julian Phillips doesn't have in his tool bag, in my personal opinion. And then from the coaching staff aspect, we see that over the course of last season, Dalen Terry gained some trust from the coaching staff. Now, I'm not going to sit there and sell him short because I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Guys can get injured. Things can change. Billy Donovan can look at who's being more impactful on the floor and leaning on those guys a little bit more. So that's why I'm not going to sit here and say he will absolutely be the Chicago Bulls next Alex Caruso, or he won't be the Chicago Bulls next Alex Caruso, simply because this is a young player. You know what I'm saying? Been in the league a couple years. And from what we've seen, it kind of, if we're drawing some comparisons, he can defend, he can help rebound, he can help energize. We still trying to see where the three is at with them. Not expecting him to be a high volume, crazy 3-point shooter, but the form looks better. He's taking them more often. So we'll see how that plays out this season. And he's a guy that you can say, hey, he's going to do a number of things that help the Chicago Bulls. We used to call this man Crash Bandicoot because he looked wild on the basketball floor. He has calmed down tremendously. And I would say that he's not having necessarily a great preseason, but not necessarily a bad preseason either. Now, what is going to help Dalen Terry in his case to live up to these expectations that he's placing on himself is that he's going to have to be a monster when it comes to defending. He's going to have to be a monster when it comes to roughing up the opposing team's player that he's guarding, getting in the passing lane to generate steals, and being that guy that, hey, you might have to go through a couple bumps and bruises to live up to the expectations of Alex Caruso, bro. That's just what it's looking like for me personally. So I think that with Dalen Terry, it's going to be a lot of different type of things that he's going to have to do to start to lean into that. I heard over the offseason that Dalen Terry also reached out to Alex Caruso just to get a little bit of advice from him. And I think that if he's able to hone that in, not necessarily just learn, but be able to apply that learning, it can go a long way for him. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the peak of Dalen Terry to where teams look at him like he's a connector like Alex Caruso, because literally Alex Caruso, you can plug into any team and you're going to get something out of that. I think Dalen Terry has some ways to go. I will say that. Will he ever reach that? I don't know. But I think that when it comes to some of these young players, a lot of the times we like to say they're bums, they're trash, and some of it might hold some validity. But I don't necessarily think he's a bum or he's trash. I think that he has a niche that he can lean into, and you want to see that done and performed on the basketball court to the highest level. I will say Alex Caruso reaching that pinnacle that Alex Caruso is on and how he's viewed around the league. Dalen Terry has to first earn minutes, then earn trust, and then go out there and execute. And it comes down to just doing more than one thing if you want to encapsulate an Alex Caruso type of performance each and every night. Because Alex Caruso not only can guard the best team guard, but Alex Caruso, we seen him guarding Joker. Dalen Terry, can you do that? We still got to see it. So I think it's only fair to say that we'll let this young player to continue to grow. I think this season is going to be huge for him. And we'll see where the Chicago Bulls and how they feel about him after this season. I'm going to personally allow him some time. You don't have to. I know some people are going to grade him harshly, and that's fine. Like, I don't necessarily think that you can absolutely, place him too high or too low per se. But there are some people that's going to praise him really, really high, and there's going to be some people that praise him really, really low. will criticize him really, really low. And I think it's all fair game simply because how much of a roller coaster ride it has been for Dalen Terry up until this point, or at least up until the second half of last season, where I really thought that Dalen Terry was coming into his own. I appreciate the number change. I appreciate him acknowledging that he needs to be better and just be himself because he can be a Swiss Army knife. I don't necessarily know if it's to the degree of an Alex Caruso, but those players that you have that can be Swiss Army knives on your roster, those are very, very valuable pieces. May not be max contract type of people, but those are players that you can lean on and say, hey, Dalen Terry, we got a guy down. We need you to go handle the rock, disperse the ball, and boom, go do that. Hey, Dalen Terry, we need a little bit more energy off the bench on the defensive side of the ball and then provide some type of spark on the offensive side. I believe Dalen Terry has that. You just want to see him hone it in and then grow and build off of that. So I'm not going to sell a kid short. He's still young. He still has some ways to go. I don't necessarily know how far he will go up, but I think that he can be a Swiss Army knife in his league. Now, is he going to be as great as Alex Caruso? That's TBD. But can he provide something positive for a team that absolutely needs some type of spark? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's very, very possible for him. Again, because I think on the offensive side, if we're keeping it a buck, I think Dalen Terry's strongest point on the offensive side is his passing. And then on the defensive side, we seen little small flashes and glimpses of him be able to hound the defender. And shout out to him for not letting Taurean Prince punk his ass. Grab that motherfucker by the head and let him know that, yeah, I'm a young buck, but we gonna bite too. I'm a dog out here. And that's what the Chicago Bulls need. We need more dogs. No more pussycats or pups. We need dogs. So continue to go out there, do your thing, bro, and show us what you're actually made of. I'm not ready to determine what you're going to be. I'm not going to go out there and say that you can't do it. I'm just going to simply say, what? Put it on wax, brother. That's it. Put it on wax. I'm going to see what this season does for you and how it look and what it looks like. And then I'll make my determination and come to my conclusion later in the season if if Dalen Terry can encapsulate some of what he's talking about when it comes to him being the Chicago Bulls' next Alex Caruso. But hey, before we get up out of here, we have a game tonight versus the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets, they made some really good changes this offseason to go out there and push for another championship, getting rid of Michael Porter Jr., and then picking up guys like Bruce Brown who helped them win that first championship. The Chicago Bulls so far are 2-1 in this preseason, and they have looked all right. They have looked all right throughout this whole entire preseason. Obviously, nothing is perfect. Obviously, we still got some things that we need to work on with our starting lineup. Obviously, we need to go out there and clean things up when it comes to taking care of the basketball. But I think tonight for the Chicago Bulls, I think they need to focus on getting up and down the floor, but also making sure that they do something about this three-point shooting that allowed the Milwaukee Bucks to go off. I think that should be a point of emphasis today. Running guys off the line. I don't necessarily know how well the Denver Nuggets have been shooting from the three-point line this preseason, but I know for the Chicago Bulls that you got to be locked in and loaded. And me personally, and this probably me nitpicking or complaining a little bit, but that's okay. Why the hell we ain't see Zach Collins start? Why we couldn't see that lineup? I'm just curious. I'm just curious. But hey, I also want to see if Ayo Dosunmu can continue his stellar play in preseason, because I think that Ayo Dosunmu can really be the X factor for the Chicago Bulls off the bench. Him and Trey Jones with a backcourt like that, and then you get some contributions and hope that P. Will, with him looking in the mirror and understanding that health is wealth in this league, hey, you can go out there and just give us your normal 9-4 off the bench. That's good for a bench player. Not even gonna hold you. C-Dub has a great point when he say 9-4 off the bench is good for a bench player. Not good enough for a starter like P. Will's caliber, but for off the bench, we'll take it. Now I'm also interested to see what else. How can the Chicago Bulls get Noah Essengate more involved? I think he deserves a little bit more reps to see how he fits into this whole equation, to speed up that timeline that we once talked about, I believe last week, to speed up that timeline into the Chicago Bulls rotation, not necessarily as a starter right away, but to where he can receive some minutes on a night in, night out basis to go out there and help the Chicago Bulls team and start fast tracking his development to being a starter that we hope that he can be one day. So I think it's important for this preseason game just to see what else is going to transpire out there. Me personally, I don't necessarily know how often or how much they will play in the final preseason game on Thursday, but it'll be awesome to see if the Chicago Bulls can come out, score some points, keep the pace with their starting lineup, see if Josh Giddey can go out there and continue to do what he needs to do. See if Trey Jones, who jammed his foot in practice yesterday, see if these guys can just hone in and lock in and be the best that they can be in tonight's game. It should be a fun one. We're going to be right here covering on Shy Bulls Podcast in collaboration with Chicago Bulls Central with my man Hayes. So y'all make sure y'all get locked in, turn up, and get ready to cheer on your Chicago Bulls, man, for the preseason game. But that is it for me today. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode. Before you get up out of here, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We do have our mailbag open. If you want to call in, state your name, leave your take. The number to do so is 773-242-9219. We appreciate y'all over here. Make sure y'all always see red, and y'all already know we're going to catch y'all on the next one for sure.
Cognac. Gang.